to look for in order to title the message, because it is about a foolish man. And the word man is not exclusive to just the male species, but it covers all men. Foolish men. Foolish men, according to the Psalms, who say in their heart that God does not exist. That's a pretty strong statement. That's a real strong statement. When man first went to the moon, one of the astronauts who got out of the space capsule and walked on the moon, he sent a message back to message control that I don't see God up here. And so somebody on the ground said, just wait till the capsule is ready to come back to Earth. Open it up and you will. You'll get that on the way home. God exists whether you believe in him or not. And my brothers and sisters, I really don't have time to explain it to you in detail. But God is real. And can I make my proposition in my argument? My proposition in the argument is this: God exists whether you believe in him or not.
All right?
Yes, sir.
I had to explain to one man, Dr. Thomas, in the barbershop. One time he was arguing from an atheist position, and I was arguing from a monotheistic or a belief in God existence, and he says, I don't believe nothing that I can't see. And he was weighing heavy, Tammy, on that argument. I said, you mean to tell me you don't believe nothing that you can't see? I said, then let me come over there and put my hand on your mouth, my fingers on your nose, because you can't see air. But I guarantee you, you waiting for every breath to take it.
Yes, sir.
There's a whole lot of things you can't see that you believe. And David writes this particular text because he is astonished at the fact that there are some men so foolish. That word in Hebrew means ignoramus. People who are so ignorant that they would state the claim that God doesn't exist. And that's a pretty strong statement because they live in God's world. They're breathing God's life. They're living in the body that God created from the dust of the earth. But they say that God does not exist. Let me give you this before I go too far. The book of Psalms is a diary. It is a collection of writings that record the events of about 7 different authors. 79 of these Psalms were written by David. David recorded, or what we would call in the modern vernacular, he journaled his journey. He wanted to record some of the events of his life, and some of the thoughts of his life, some of the occasion and circumstances of his life. So in the book of Psalms, he journaled his journey. He put some things down in writing so that he wouldn't forget. But he also put them down so that we could remember and reflect. Studying this particular Psalms 14, but I discovered that it really kind of begins in Psalms 10.
All right. Okay.
Because in Psalms 10, I'm just going to read about the first stanza in each one of those Psalms. Psalms 10, Psalm 11, Psalm 12, and Psalm 13. It's almost as if David is going to come to some conclusion after he considers and lays out the facts of his argument. He says in Psalms number 10, and if you've not asked this question or been in this circumstances, you probably ain't saved. Because he says in Psalms 1:10, why do you stand afar off? Now, there have been some moments in your life and in mine to where it has seems as if God is standing afar off. Second stanza, he says, why do you hide in times of my troubles? God looks like an absent landlord at moments and times in your life.
Yes, sir.
He begins by saying, why do you stand afar off? Why do you hide in times of trouble? And he really talks about his confidence in God over evil. Because my brothers and sisters, when evil is happening in your life,
All right now.
sometimes it seems like God is afar off. Have you ever had a time in your life when it looked like God was hiding from you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Boy, I'm about to get happy already.
All right now. Come on, preacher.
I hear you, honey.
And then in Psalms 11, he talks about faith in the Lord of righteousness. He talks about trying to get away from it all. Because I can tell you that life will become overwhelming. I don't care how much you love Jesus.
Yes, sir.
I don't care how much money you got,
Pastor.
how good your family is.
Uh-huh.
There'll be moments when you want to get away from it,
Yes, sir.
get away from it all.
Yes, sir.
And David speaks of that, how sometimes he just want to get away from it all. And he talks a lot in that chapter 11 about his enemies, folk who are out to get you, folk who trying to undermine you, folk who try to set snares for you, folk who trying to trip you up. And really, chapter 11, he wasn't talking about folk who didn't know him. He talking about folk who did know him.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Yeah.
And them folk will make you want to get away
Yes, sir.
and flee like a bird to the mountain
Yes, sir.
to find a hiding place.
Yes.
And then in chapter 12, he kind of speaks about man's treachery, but God's consistency.
Yeah, say it, man.
And boy, I can shout right
Yes,
here.
sir. Yes, sir.
Because let me tell you something, man is treacherous, but God is consistent. Wherever there's a man that's trying to trip you up, there's a God there holding you up. Well, I tell you, you got to know when to shout. Because in this 12th Psalms, he says, man is treacherous, low down, snake in the grass, and in any moment he gets to undermine you, to trip you up, to snare you. He gonna do just what he has been.
Yes, sir.
But he says in Psalms 12, but God is consistent.
Yes, sir.
If you got a man trying to trip you up, you got a God that's there trying to deliver you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then in Psalms 13, he starts asking 4 questions. Boy, let me tell you. If you don't ever ask God some questions, you probably ain't walking with him faithful. Because you'll ask him some questions. There'll be moments in your life when stuff happens, stuff comes, expected and unexpected stuff. And you'll start asking God some questions. And in Psalms 13, he said, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face? How long will I take counsel in my soul? Having sorrow in my heart daily. See, some of y'all don't know nothing about that because you happy go lucky all the time. But there are some moments in my life where sorrow is in my heart daily. And boy, let me tell you, that next stanza is deep. Because he said, how long will my enemies be exalted over me? I'm telling you, ain't that a good question to ask? Because it looked like God ought to make your enemies let you alone. It looked like God ought to deliver you from your enemies. But don't ever forget Psalms 23, where David says, he prepares me a table in the presence of my enemies.
Yes, sir.
Boy, let me tell you, you don't like the fact that God will give you an audience. And the audience won't be folk who for you, but folk who not folk who cheer you up, but folk who try to tear you down. And God has a purpose and a reason and a logic for letting your audience be your enemy. And he just kind of makes this argument. He talked about a whole lot of things in there, and I ain't got time. He talked about when you are in that situation where you got a lot of questions, you got to learn to trust God. Man, I wish I had time to explain this to you. That when you are in the moments of questioning God, asking God, when unexpected, when unhappy, and things happen in your life, you got to learn to trust God in the process.
Yes, sir.
You got to learn to trust Him in the process. Because the process is worth it. Well, if I had time, I'd explain to you about the process.
Go ahead.
See, that's what some of y'all are in. You're in the process.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the process is when things are being made. But there's also an area in the process that's called quality control. And in the quality control, you got to make sure there's no defective or broken part. So that when the product comes out in the end, it can work as it ought to work. So some things are slowed down in the process because the part that's been put on there is defective or is cracked. So you have to be in the process a little longer. There was a date for production, but God said you got too many broken parts. So some stuff got to be taken out,
Yeah. Yeah.
replaced with some unbroken stuff.
Yeah.
I know some folk that work at Toyota, they build Corollas all day long. But at the end of that production line, they got what they call quality control. Folk who investigate, folk who look at, to try to find if there are any defects in the process and in the product that's been in the process. And see, God got some of y'all in the process. And it looks like your production date is behind, but there's some stuff. And boy, if I had time, I'd explain to you this. It ain't your fault that the part is broken and flawed and defective, because you didn't put it on yourself. Some things people put on you. Sometimes there's some people that have caused your process. Man, I sure feel like preaching. And listen, I'm telling you, but you got to trust God. Man, let me tell you, it ain't easy to trust God. Because you have a production date, a day of arrival, when you think you ought to be where you're supposed to be, and you're supposed to be where you're going. You got dreams, you got a destination, and you say you ought to be there, but you're still in process. But in that process, trust it. Don't mean you can't question it. Because in that Psalms 13, he had about 4 questions. Listen, how long?
Yes, sir.
And I got about 4 or 5 folk, I know ain't all of us, that's been asking God that question in this season, how long?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How long?
How long?
And not because you don't trust him, but because you're frustrated. Not because you don't trust him because it looks like you're behind. Not because you don't trust him. Then he comes to chapter Psalms 14. Boy, he makes an astonishing proclamation. And he's astonished himself. Because he's just written chapter 10, 11, 12, and 13. He talked about the faithfulness of God, the reliability of God, the consistency of God, and how God gets you through moments of process. And he's almost astonished how a man could conclude that God don't exist. You need to be able to check the record of what you have been through and who brought you through. Because somebody in here know he's a way out of nowhere. You know how you know? Because you've been in some ways where it looked like there wasn't no way out. You've been between a rock and a hard place. And you know that he will show up every time. On time. He said only a fool will say that God don't exist. Now there's a whole lot of things I don't know. I don't know whether you love me. I don't even know whether my mama's my mama, because I wasn't there when I was born. That's what they tell me. Listen, I don't even know whether I'm going to be here next year, next hour, next week. But let me tell you, one thing is settled in my mind. Yes, God is real. See, I didn't settle that. I don't know about you. I know God is real. I know God exists.
Come on, preach, man.
See, y'all gonna make me preach.
Go ahead, preach up.
I'm trying not to get too excited, but let me tell you, I know God is real. And I know God exists.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
David says the fool
Yeah.
Says in his heart. And I want to give you the proper Hebrew language of that first stanza in that Psalms 14. It literally says the fool says in his heart that there is no God, but the real translation is the fool says in his heart that God does not exist. And the reason why he is an ignoramus is because he says that in face of all the evidence out there that God exists. Now, if he didn't have any evidence, his claim might be valid. But he got too much evidence to come to such a foolish conclusion. Because he says that God doesn't exist in the face of evidence. Man, don't listen. Go on to Soldier Field in Chicago and look at all them lights surrounding the stadium at night on game night. We know that somebody in Chicago put those lights up there, but when you look at the sun, didn't no man create? And the sun, if you believe in evolution, is millions of years old, and the Big Bang Theory that the sun is millions of years old and it still ain't ran out of fuel. The stars are unnumberable, and the sun that we see in our universe ain't the only sun that exists, but it's the brightest sun in our universe. It's other Milky Ways, worlds beyond worlds. And you can't look at that and not believe that God created that. A God that exists outside of time, space, and matter. Now listen, I know that one kind of is a little extreme. But now I'm going to give you something a little better that you might be able to get. Now you know what a gnat is. A gnat is an unseeable insect that irritates, aggravates, bugs you by buzzing around your ear. And that little bitty gnat, really, you can't see it until it comes by the light or past something white because he's so small. But you can go to the African savannah and you can see an elephant, and that elephant is big. And I'm just trying to give you some evidence that God exists. But the same God that created a heart and a brain in that elephant created a heart and a brain in that flea. And you can prove the existence of God not by cosmological evidence, and that's the sun, moon, and the stars, but theological evidence, and that's by design. It's some stuff you can't explain. Man can't explain. It's cosmological and it's theological evidence that God exists in the designs that are in the world when you see what the hand of God. Cosmological is sun, moon, and stars. Theological is the design of the universe, how unique everything is.
Come on, man.
I could give you some theological evidence and the design of everything. Man pretty smart, but he ain't smart as God.
No, sir.
I mean, when you look at this universe and look at this world and you look at all of the design elements of, okay, see, let's not even go into the world. Let's just look at your body. How God designed you uniquely. And boy, let me tell you, he made you a little beneath the angels, but above all the crawling creatures because of his unique design. Boy, if I could tell you a little bit about the human body and how it works and how God uniquely designed the human body to self-sustain itself and how your liver can filter out all the toxins in your body, and the toxins that it filters out, it sends it to your bladder, and your bladder is able to get it out of your body through your stool in your...
Go ahead now.
And how the heart beats, and in your heart there's blood, and in that blood there are two kinds of blood cells, white and red. One helps oxygen transfer, other one helps the immune system, and God can keep you alive if you never took a pill. how when you scratch your hand and cause a wound, the blood and the red and white automatically knows there's an emergency. We need to get there first to stop the bleeding. Other one, we need to create a staff so we can start building some new skin. I'm talking about theological evidence that God exists. Destiny, you being a surgical assistant, you're going to see some miraculous things. Somebody laying on the table being cut open. And it looked like that kind of destructive surgery should take them out. But they stay alive.
Only God.
Well, y'all going to make me shout.
Go ahead,
Boy, we don't even talk about life.
Come on, man.
I'm not talking about life in the body. I'm talking about the sensation of life, that you might be taken off of life support. But that body still lives, and sometimes it can be a healthy body. But when the sensation of life, and that life is only given by God, because Adam was a corpse until Genesis said God breathed into him the breath of.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right.
Help somebody.
Theological evidence that God exists by design.
Yeah. By design.
Woo, I tell you, he's some kind of design.
Yes, sir.
The most unique thing scientists say about you is not your face. It's not even your hair.
Yeah.
But the most unique thing about you is your fingerprint, because God gave everybody an individual unique fingerprint. Even though there are 7 billion people on the face of the planet, not 2 people in human history has ever had the same fingerprint. You can be identified in Spain, Barcelona, Africa, and Uganda, over in Canada, the Congo, by your fingerprint, because God uniquely designs you. Man didn't do it, God did.
Yes, sir. Yeah. All right. Yes, he did.
Help somebody.
But then the fool will say in his heart that there is no God. I'm finna close, because he gonna use the rest of the Psalms to tell us why the fool has come to this conclusion that God don't exist.
All right. All right.
All right, come on, baby.
Because he's corrupt. And see, that's why you discount the existence of God, because of corruption.
Yeah.
And he really kind of segues to that, and he says, because of their abominable works. Because when you are corrupt, you do not believe in the existence of God. Because if you believe in the existence of God, you would have to believe in morality. And morality teaches you how to behave and how to treat other folk. And morality puts limits on yourself. In other words, you just can't do anything if you believe in God. Because to believe in God is to believe in morality. And morality is about right and wrong. And when you believe in God, there's some things you just can't do to another person.
Amen. Amen. All right.
Because they are corrupt, and there is none who does good. Paul picks up on this in chapter 3 of Romans, and around the 19th verse, because he's making the argument that it is by grace, and it is not man who sought God, but God who sought man.
Yeah.
Because he's really making that phrase, there is none good. It doesn't mean that man is trying to find God. What man is trying to find, Beverly, is religion.
All right. Yeah.
Religion don't save, but religion will get you caught up in some rituals, and religion will make it be about works, not about faith. And see, the problem with the world today, everybody is seeking religion, but not God. And he talked about in Romans chapter 1, there is a generation, and he writes it in Romans chapter 3. He quotes this exact verse, but in Romans chapter 1, he talks about the godless world, godless people, godless humanity, godless Christians who have religion but not God. And when you have religion without God, you become corrupt. God looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any who understood or understand and who seek God. Man, God was, can I give it to you in the modern vernacular? Because I'm almost finished. You know this fifth Sunday. God looked at the church, into the church, to see if there was anybody who knew him, who was seeking to know him. And the text says he found none. He found a whole lot of religious folk at church, folk who were practicing religion, practicing the tenets of their religion, but there was nobody who was really seeking God. And I really can't give you any explanation of what it means to seek God, because I don't know how you seek him. I don't know what place you come from in seeking him. But every Sunday morning, what I come to see is the Lord. You might be here, but you're not going to be a distraction for me finding what I'm looking for. I'm coming here seeking the Lord. I know you got a lot of foolishness problems in your life that happened before you ever got to church. You bring your attitude to church, but that ain't gonna stop me from seeking the Lord. I come here to see God. And I come here to get an understanding. That's what he says. He wanted to look from heaven upon the children of men to see if there are any who understand. And I come here to get an understanding. And then I come here to seek God, because let me tell you something. I need to know some stuff about some stuff, because there's some stuff going on in my life that science, philosophy, psychology, the stars, the moon, astronomy can't understand. But if I look in the Word, and I'm trying to explain to my academic brothers who have matriculated higher education, who hold their bachelor's and master's and doctoral degrees, that you don't need to read the books to understand the world. You need to read the Bible. And when you read the Bible, you'll understand the time. You'll be like the sons of Issachar. You will understand the time. There ain't nobody who even is seeking to understand. They've all turned, in verse 3, turned aside. They have become corrupt. And listen, there's none who does good. Find somebody who's seeking understanding, who's seeking God, who has a heart and a desire to do good. And doing good ain't being perfect, but it's trying to do what's right because you want right done to you. You're doing right because that's what the Bible says you ought to do. You ought to treat others the way you want to be treated. You ought to have a sense of benevolence. You ought to want to make it as easy for somebody else as you would want it for you. That's what it means to seek good, because he's going to talk about there are those who will even oppress the poor. They are so morally bankrupt that they don't care who they hurt to get ahead. I'm almost finished. And let me tell you, that they just ain't right. And I don't have time to explain this to you, but let me tell you, are you religious or are you seeking the Lord? Right. Are you religious or are you seeking an understanding? Let me hit the pause button. I'm going to explain to you why you not. Quit trying to understand somebody else and understand yourself. And see, you trying to change the world, change your environment by changing people. But forget about trying to change people and change the world. Change you.
Yes, Lord.
And I'm trying to understand me. And when I understand me, things will change. The people around me will change. And the problem we spend with is trying to change everybody and everything.
Yes, preacher.
But do you know who you is? Have you sat down and had a meeting with yourself? Have you sat down and had a critical assessment of who you are? You ain't all that. Man, I was preaching the other week. I wasn't preaching it here, but Jesus really talks about in the 6th chapter of Matthew, he talks about kingdom citizens, and Jesus is wrapping up the Sermon on the Mountain. And then he's going to really give an assessment. You know, when I talked about the 2 trees, and I talked about the 2 gates, and then I talked about the 2 builders. But before Jesus said what he said in chapter 7, he said something in chapter 6, because he says Christians ought not judge. He says judge not. And the reason why he said judge not, because he was talking to the Pharisees who loved to judge people because they thought their religion made them better than other people. And Jesus amplified it because he taught this concept, Irene. He says, make sure before you try to get the plank out of other folk, and get the sawdust out of other folks' eyes, or the speck out of other folks' eyes, make sure you get the plank out of your own eye. Before you trying to judge somebody and make an assessment of their relationship with God, you need to look at your own relationship with God. But he says we project on other people what's wrong with us that we won't fix. Because we think the only way things gonna get better is if we fix somebody else instead of our own.
You own it, preacher.
If you always talking about they always messing with me, they always picking on me. Jesus said, judge not.
That's what he said.
They should be judged. Then he amplifies it in Matthew chapter 6, and he says there's some folk around here who got big planks in their eyes. Well, I don't have time to really give. Yeah, I do. Here it is. Look here. Look here. Look here. Both of those are tissues, and see this the tissue in my eye. You really can't see that thing. But now you walking around with a big old thing like this in your eye. And the only reason somebody could see mine is if you look closely and carefully, and you pointed out that I got something in my eye. But you got to look close, and you got to point it out. And Jesus said, quit going around and trying to examine other folk and trying to find some flaws in their life. And you got a big old piece that not only can they see, but you can.
Go ahead, preacher. Tell it, preacher.
You walk around with this big old thing in your eye.
Yes, sir.
Same folk walk around with tissue in their eye. How you know they got tissue in your eye? Because I know them. You just don't know them. They ain't right. How you know they ain't right? Because I heard, and somebody told me, because you had to look deep to find the tissue in somebody else's eye, but the tissue in yours.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And Jesus said Christians ought not judge each other.
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain to you. He literally says that there is none who does good.
Yes.
And all of the workers of iniquity have no knowledge. Well, I'm going to have to close this out because I really don't have time to go through all the verses, but I'm trying to explain to you. He talks about the workers of iniquity, and I really need to tell you the difference between iniquities and this iniquities thing. This word is an interesting word because iniquities you can't see, but people have them, and people live them out. through their evil and wickedness and corruption. They don't look evil on the outside, but they show no evil. In other words, they look innocent. They look real saintly. And you got to be careful when you're dealing with a person who has iniquity in their heart. Because iniquity you can't really see. When a person is just outright unrighteous, you pretty much know that they ain't right, because they drink, they smoke, they go to the gambling halls, and they pretty just flirt with anybody. That's just overtly, you can see. There's other folk, they're a little more sneaky than that. They got iniquity, and iniquity you try to hide in your heart. You really can't see that iniquity. You think that they are really more than what they really are, but iniquity is in.
Yes, sir. You telling it, preacher.
And they dress iniquity up with religion, and they come to church and look real godly and saint.
Yes, sir.
I'm almost finished, but I'm trying to explain this to you.
Go ahead,
I'm trying to explain to you, if the gambling hall didn't have but one hall, you'd be all right. But the gambling hall you go to and I go to are two different locations. If it wasn't but one liquor store, you might could get away with what you get away with. But all of us,
Go ahead, preacher.
all of us can sneak better than the rest of us.
Yes, sir.
Have all the workers of iniquity have no knowledge.
Yeah.
Who eat up my people as they eat bread. And they do not call upon. When I call upon the Lord, that's a question. I'm almost finished. I'm telling you. I got to close with verse 6, because let me tell you, they don't even know how to treat the poor. Because they so corrupt and so abominable. They don't even, you shame the counsel of the poor. And but let me tell you, you just don't, but he doesn't just give a disastrous, devastating proclamation, but he said the Lord is their refuge.
Yes, sir.
I didn't really understand this word, Charlene, until I started studying the Psalms about the Lord is your refuge. You're a shout.
Go ahead, preacher. Come on. Go ahead, preacher.
Let me give it to you in a modern vernacular. When you can't get to your house, he'll bring his house to yours. When you can't get to him, he'll come. You got to know what the Bible means when it says the Lord is my refuge. When I can't get to church,
Go ahead, preacher. Come on now. Come on, Shannon.
man, you got to know he is your refuge. The Lord ain't just with you because you're at church today. But go to your job and see if he don't show up. And be your. Go to the doctor tomorrow and get a bad diagnosis. She won't. He show up and be your. Y'all gonna make me preach that stuff, I'm telling you.
Come on, Shannon.
He boy, listen. I don't have time, but listen. You be talking and reading these verses, but you really gotta stop sometimes and look and read them a little slow, because you can be moving too fast. And you got to understand that the Lord is with you.
Yes, sir.
And that the Lord is your refuge, and he'll go with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, listen, I'm 55, preaching almost 41 years. I know about the Lord
Yes, sir.
being my refuge.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, that salvation of Israel would come out of Zion. When the Lord brings us back, the Lord brings back the captivity of his people. Now, I got to explain that to you, and I'm close, because I just wanted to explain it. Because there will be a time the Lord will bring you back. You don't understand captivity, the captivity of the Assyrians, the captivity of the Babylonians, when God has your enemies over you because of your disobedience, because of your rebellion, and God allows your enemies to punish you, but the punishment won't last forever. There will come a time when God will come, and some of y'all is waiting on the Lord. You've been waiting a long time. You're in chapter 13. You're waiting. You've been asking how long, and that's what these Jews were asking. Israel and Judah was asking how long. But let me tell you, at some point, it's enough is enough, and the Lord will come get you. See, some of y'all waiting on the Lord to come get you, and I need to go ahead and tell you, He's closer than what you think. It looks like He's afar off, but He's closer than what you think. God is on His way to get you, to bring you back, to bring you out, and to set you back in the place He promised, because He made a promise to Abraham that he would occupy the land of Jerusalem. His descendants would be like the sand on the sea, and they are now in captivity. But David said, the Lord will bring you back. And He'll bring you through. And then I got to close, because I'm trying to do some textual preaching. And then he said, let Jacob rejoice. And see, I'm gonna do these two words, and I'm gonna close. Rejoice and be glad. Because he started out, says the fool says in his heart there is no God, or God doesn't exist. But for those of you who do know God exists, two things you need to be. You need to rejoice. Oh, I don't tell you how to rejoice. Because see, we got different backgrounds, we got different pedigrees, we grew up in different families, and some of us grew up in different churches. So I can't tell you how to rejoice, but all I need to tell you, you should rejoice. Now you can't do it like I do. Because see, you don't know like I know what the Lord, as Grant Allen said, has done for me. But now you need to find a reason to rejoice Him. You might not get loud, you might not throw up your hands, you might not run all over the church, but however you do it, rejoice. I've been here almost 17 years. I know how some of y'all rejoice. Some of y'all rejoice and you don't ever move. Patsy just bucked her glasses under her eyes, and she starts shaking her leg when she gets happy. I know when she rejoicing back there, because she's sophisticated opera singer. She don't get too out of decorum of church. But even somebody as decorum in church as she is, every now and then, she get happy. But it ain't like Miss Jefferson. Miss Jefferson don't hold her peace. She'll get over there and she'll get to saying, yeah, baby. That's how she rejoices, but that's all right. One more decorum. Other one just let it loose. I don't know how you do it, but however you do it, rejoice. And then, Brandon, I got to get this last word. It said, and be glad. Man, see, this is the problem with both saved and unsaved folk, and Christians and non-Christians. We don't know how to be glad. And see, that's the problem. We don't have enough glad folk in the world. I taught a Bible study here one night on why are you so angry? Because I wanted to ask the question, because Cain was angry, but he shouldn't have been angry at Abel, because Abel didn't do nothing to him. But he was just angry. And the reason why he was angry, because he didn't know how to be glad. And to be glad is to be appreciative to God, and to be thankful for your existence, and to understand it could have been. Man, I'm 55, got a bad knee, sciatic nerve, but I'm just. And when you, man, I got to close here. When you glad, you'll walk on a bad knee. You'll come to church with a bad sciatic nerve pinching your back, running down your leg, hitting in your big toe. When you're glad, because you understand that it could have been the other way. And it's always somebody worse off than you. You got to be glad. I'm glad to be in the service one. Boy, if I could hoop right now, I'd holler right now. Boy, if I could hoop, I'd tell you what them preachers tell you that I don't like that they tell you. I tell you to find two people, high five them, shake them and rock them. But I know our church too sophisticated. We don't believe in that decorum. And so since you don't get up and just shout to three people, yeah. He been good.
Yes, he has.
He been good.
He been doing good.
I'm glad. And y'all gonna make me preach. Listen, I'm glad to be alive. I'm glad to be among the land of the living. I'm glad to have my health in my strength. I'm glad mama called me on the other end of the phone. I'm glad my children are alive. I'm glad that when I laid down last night, it was under a roof, in a bed, with heat and air. I'm glad. You can't get me upset. You can't steal my joy. I'm glad. Might well rejoice and be glad. See, Miss Jefferson done got in her rejoicing part. Because she ain't talking, but she moaned. Because 92, if you want to moan, you ought to. Well, let me give you this. I see y'all making me do one I want to do. Y'all can stay standing because I'm going to make you hot. Because in chapter 10, 11, 12, and 13, he looked at the record of what God had done. Had done to make him win over his enemies. Make it through his adversities. Make it through the snares and the traps. And in the modern vernacular, we would say through many dangerous toils. And snares have already come. And if you got some dangerous toils and snares on your record, Wanda, you still here? You're back where you was. And it's better than what it was before you ever went through what you went through. And a room mama was sleeping in, a tree fell over. But not only do you have your house back, but you still got mama. You ought to be glad. You got to know how to be glad. Listen, if I couldn't say a word, I just wave my hand to tell him thank you. I'm just glad to be in the service one more time. I'm just glad to be in. I got it. The door of the church is open. The door is open. I'm glad to be in this service.